Hello and welcome to this overview of Spirent iTest. The goal of this video is to introduce you to the many ways that iTest can add value and streamline the diverse processes in the quality workflow. We'll first show how iTest can provide efficiencies to manual processes, such as testing, device configuration, bug reproduction, etc. iTest serves as the single launching point for the tools that you use on a daily basis and provides a similar look and feel. Tools like secure CRT, traffic generators, SNMP MIB browsers. All of these tools are now incorporated into the iTest platform. So now you simply need to launch iTest rather than 4 or 5 disparate tools. iTest also captures all the interactions with the devices. So all of the commands or steps that are part of the process and all of the replies or responses that come back from the devices you're interacting with. So now, simply by doing your job in iTest, you've gained the value of documenting your process. You can also now use these documents to re-execute those steps across multiple test beds if you're doing configuration, or simply if you just need to repeat a process multiple times, such as bug reproduction. iTest also generates a historical record for each of these executions. Since these executions are live on the devices, the output may change from run to run, and you may need to be able to trace what those changes are. These historical records make it very easy to do so, and also make it very easy to share information with other teams, colleagues, vendors, customers, etc. We'll then talk about how these documents can be incorporated into the automation workflow. How iTest can be extended into an automation framework, and how one can create reusable libraries, integrate with revision control systems, and also run iTest assets in a lights-out regression system. Before we dive into the demo, let's just take a moment to talk about the iTest user interface. As you can see, it's primarily broken into 2 sections. iTest is a workflow-driven tool, and the workflows are managed by this activities view here on the left-hand side. As you can see, there's about 5 workflows here, and as you click through each one, this window will guide you through the process. You can always get back to this screen by clicking on the Home button. Over here on the right-hand side, this is where we'll be working with things like our executable documents, our reports, and our interactive sessions into our devices. Okay, let's walk through the develop a test cases workflow. We're going to skip by connect to devices and build a topology because develop a test case really incorporates both of those into it. Now, even though it's called develop a test case, that's really just the type of file we're creating. And so the workflow is called develop a test case. But really, this is any kind of repeatable process that you want to be able to capture and be able to replay, and also maybe add some simple analysis too. And then down the line, you could enhance it to create a fully automated regressionable test, or even take pieces of it and start creating libraries. So really, this is this executable document that we were talking about at the beginning of the video. So we're going to create a new test case. I'll just give it the name demo. And here I have the opportunity to add some basic documentation. So a headline and a description. And really where this is useful is because once this document is created, we can share it either with teammates via email or export or a version control system, or with customers or vendors or whoever might want to use this document to capture steps or see the steps that we did or execute the steps against their test bed. So this just gives some really basic documentation of what we're doing and who the owner of the test is. And here you can see we already have some topologies created. So I'm going to just use my local demo topology. And again, what we could do is then run this document that we're about to create again on a different topology. So that's really where the topology comes in and the flexibility that topologies provide. And so If we had gone into the build a topology activity, then we could go ahead and create a new topology if we wanted to, but we're just going to use a topology that we have created already. Okay, so now you can see that the activities view has now changed. And so we can see here that the first step is add steps by capturing. So if I go ahead and click on add steps by capturing, you can see that now the activities view has changed to walk us through this process. So you can see here we have our topology. So you can see we have many devices on here, a couple of switches, PC, a couple of Linux servers, a VM server. And then down over here we have some servers which are running web services. We're primarily going to work with this switch here. But if we click on this button here, you can see we get a list of all of the devices in the topology and all of the different sessions or tools associated with those devices. So you can see we have a command prompt, we have SSH, Telnet and SNMP. These are the two we're going to use in a moment. SSH again, here we have some web services, here we even have some virtual machine management. All of these tools can run under iTest, and all of these tools' interactions will be captured while running under iTest. So for instance, if I open up my Telnet session here, you can see I now have a Telnet shell open in iTest. And now I can click this again and open SNMP. And we now have SNMP open in iTest. Now, if I go ahead and just execute a few commands as I normally would, you can see now I get the output from the device. And if I come over to SNMP, now I just might want to walk this MIB like I normally would. Let's look at the system description here, and let's take a look at the interface table. You can see if you look down in the lower left here, we have a running tally of our actions. So show version, show flash, here's our get table. So iTest is capturing everything we're doing here. So let me just close these out now. And now what iTest is telling us in this yellow box is basically when we're done, we can go ahead and click this button. And now you can see it's taken those steps and added them to a document. So now we have a list of steps and the output that came back from the device. So here's the show uptime. Here's the show version. So these are two telnet commands, and let's take a look at the SNMP get table. And now you can see we have the table. So two very different tools, and simply by just executing them inside iTest, we get all of the actions and commands that we executed and all of the responses that came back from the device. We'll talk about the blue boxes in a few minutes when we talk about adding checks to this document such that iTest can then make decisions for us. If we click on Return to develop a test case, you can see the second button here says Execute Test Case. If we click on Execute Test Case, and now click on this Start Execution button, we can now replay those steps, both in SNMP and Telnet, live on the device. So we just replayed those steps on the device. Let's go back to Return to develop a test case. All right, let's walk through the Analyze Response activity. And that's really the power in automation. And if you think about it, that's really what we've done here is we've automated a process. So traditionally, to do this, in automation, you would need to write a script and you would need to use a regular expression or something like that to parse the output. iTest makes it much easier to be able to do that. And this is where the blue boxes that we mentioned earlier will come into play. So we're going to go ahead and say, I want to validate something in the response. We want to check the show version command. So let me click next. We want to compare the extracted value to a specific value. I'm going to click auto-generated query. So now notice we have these queries here. So here's build version, build number, boot image, primary. These queries correspond to the blue boxes. And so you can see that they're human readable and they're also much more powerful than regular expressions. There's a lot of things you can do with blue boxes in this technology we call response mapping that you cannot do with regular expressions. So as you can see, we don't have a script and we don't have any regular expressions, but we're about to add a rule that will check to make sure that this is the correct version number. So if we click next, we want it to be equal to the value a.14.03. If it's a matching condition, we want to pass the test. If it's a failing condition, we want to fail. And then here's a summary. And so what you can see is that iTest has added what we call an analysis rule in. We can see right here that it's associated with show version. We're querying the build version, and we want it to be equal to a.14.03. And you can see here from the green highlighting in the response window that we have a visual cue that this is a passing condition. So now if we back out to return to develop a test case and click on execute again, once again we're playing this live on the device, but now we have output. We have build version matched a.14.03, and now we have an overall pass for the entire document. So now we know that that specific check passed and that all of our checks passed. Right now we only have one, but we could go through and add more checks in the same manner. Okay, so now let's talk about execution reports. One of the great advantages of iTest is that it produces reports for every execution. So here we see the report from our last execution, and you can see it looks a lot like our document, but it's actually a historical record. Here's our output. You can see it has a timestamp and a summary at the top. Now we actually keep a centralized database of these. So not only do I have all of my executions, but I have all of my colleagues' executions as well. Now these reports can serve as a really good communication tool. I can also save this off as an HTML, text, or XML file. And now I have a document which is very easy to share with non-iTest users. So we find this really helps with bug reproduction, traceability, anything where you need to share information amongst teams or amongst vendors, customers, etc. So you can see we have our topology at the top and all of our steps, including our passing green highlighting there. Here's our command, our response, SNMP down here, etc. We mentioned traceability. Another thing that's really valuable is we can actually select 2 or more reports and actually compare them. So now we can see the differences between these executions, which are primarily around uptime, which we would expect. We also had a different MAC address here as well. But I could go ahead and now save this as HTML. Now this is our comparison report. And so now we're going to get a similar looking report, except now we're going to get a side-by-side comparison. So this is really useful for traceability, upgrades, checking differences between configurations, anything where you need to compare 2 or more reports. And you can see you get the side-by-side comparison and the highlighted differences. So up to this point, we've seen a lot of value already in the fact that we were able to create this automated document by simply capturing our interactions with our devices using tools that are very familiar to us. Taking that a step further, though, and integrating into an automation framework, iTest has the ability to create variables, parameters, integrate with a test management system, create libraries, use libraries. All of the power of an automation platform that you would expect is here in iTest. And so what we find a lot is that this could be a multi-stage process where teams start off just capturing their interactions and adding some basic analysis and then enhance the documents as time goes on. One of the other big parts of an automation framework is the ability to share these libraries and assets. And so typically this is done through a source control system. So if we click to return to activities and click on manage workspace, you can see this is a list of all of the documents I currently have. And demo is the one we just worked on. And that's currently not part of my repository. So if I want to go ahead and check this in so that my teammates can use it, I can simply right click, select team, and commit. I'll give a brief description and click OK, and that has now been checked into the repository. So we do have all of the features that you would expect to be able to create and use an automation framework. Another major component of an automation framework is the ability to run regression. iTest contains a tool called iTest RT. iTest RT is the command line version of iTest, or the runtime version of iTest. iTest does not need to be running for iTest RT to work. In fact, iTest does not even need to be installed. iTest RT allows you to set a lot of things at the command line, such as parameter values, topology, whether or not to write a test report and in what format, etc. So it provides a lot of flexibility and therefore can integrate with a lot of test management systems, or it could even be run in a cron job. So you could schedule your executions for overnight, or if you're in a test management system and you're in an agile process, you could have them run as soon as documents are available. But as you see here, we get similar output as we do in the GUI. So we get our execution messages here. So here's our build version matching. We get a summary that the test has passed, the execution time, and a timestamp. So this provides a lot of flexibility to integrate with automated frameworks. Hopefully this video gave you a good sense of how iTest can add value across the entire quality workflow. We showed how we can create documents of repetitive manual tasks simply by working as we normally would with familiar tools inside of iTest. We were able to capture all of our interactions with our devices and then replay those commands or interactions live on the devices. This allows us a lot of flexibility for both documenting and repeating manual tasks, things like bug reproduction, configuration, stress testing, etc. We also showed how we could use the execution documents to compare output. So in terms of configuration changes, traceability, etc., this is a very valuable tool. The execution reports were also very valuable in terms of communication, both within the organization and outside of the organization. We talked about how iTest might integrate with a full automation framework and how we were able to create and reuse libraries and how we were able to integrate with a test management system. And then finally, how we were able to integrate with a regression system through iTest RT. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact your local Spirent representative or visit www.spirent.com. Thank you very much.